Hello, good evening, and thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. So was it actually an unhealthy debate? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. up on Capitol Hill today, testifying before senators. We'll show you how it got personal.
I would say effectively we're denying people vaccine.
Senator Cantwell.
You're wrong.
You have to do the research.
I'm happy to have a detailed discussion with you about it. You're so wrong on your facts.
You're interrupting me, and sir, you're a charlatan. That's what you are.
That's just some of it. Plus, the robots are here. That's the message from the First Lady Melania Trump today, the big event that she hosted with some of the biggest names in tech, and why Elon Musk didn't show up. Also tonight, Chicago bracing for the president to possibly send in the National Guard as his administration prepares to ramp up ICE arrests. And as the National Football League season begins, thank goodness for that, did the stakes actually just get higher? How a little-known agency right here in Washington just handed out a very big betting win. I'll explain that. But first tonight, here on the Hill, I guess you could call it a dose of disdain. The Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., testifying before a Senate committee today, and it was loud throughout. Democrats pointing the finger right at Kennedy over vaccine access, for example, with the HHS secretary forcefully pushing back at one point against Senator Elizabeth Warren.
You promised that you would not take away vaccines from anyone who wanted them.
Most Americans will be able to get it from their pharmacy free.
The question is everyone who wants it. That was your promise.
No, I didn't. No, I never promised that I was going to recommend products for which there is no indication.
That back and forth there about the COVID vaccine. Republicans, some of them at least, echoing similar concerns, noting that vaccine research was completed during President Trump's first term in office.
Secretary Kennedy, in your confirmation hearings, you promised to uphold the highest standards for vaccines. Since then, I've grown deeply concerned. The public has seen measles outbreaks, leadership at the National Institute of Health questioning the use of mRNA vaccines, the recently confirmed director of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention fired.
So that's just some of the politics. But what has Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually done as the Secretary of Health and Human Services? Here's some of it. RFK Jr. has removed COVID vaccine recommendations at this point in time. He fired all 17 members of the vaccine advisory panel, replaced them with advisors that he selected. He stripped funding for mRNA vaccine research, some $500 million of it. That led to the development, for example, of Pfizer and Moderna shots back in 2020 at the start of the pandemic. Now, aside from vaccines, Kennedy also has totally begin to reform the agency that he runs. Happens often, really, with cabinet secretaries as they get in. He chairs the Make America Healthy Again Commission, and one of his top priorities is banning synthetic food dyes. He also launched Operation Stork Speed, which deals with baby formula and trying to look at that issue. Now, whatever side of the spectrum that you fall on, most can agree that the American healthcare system needs some serious help. How to go about it, of course, is part of the debate. But here's just some of the numbers. Again, just some of it. When we look at America's overall health, it is hard to ignore this, the surge in obesity rates. Nearly half of U.S. adults, 40%, you can see there, considered obese. It was just 14% many decades ago. And that coincides with the jump in Americans who have been diagnosed with diabetes. The latest CDC figures show nearly 12% rather, are diabetic. Would you look at that and how it's climbed again over the last 50 years, really a 6x jump there. And the amount that we spend on medicine and hospitals and healthcare just up and to the right, far outpacing inflation, exceeding, for example, average hourly earnings. So if you go back from basically the turn of the century to the latest data, this is average hourly wages. It's gone up 123%. But would you look at this? Medical services, 138%. Hospital services, basically 2x what you've brought home in your paycheck, up 256%. By comparison, other items like cars, clothing, computer software, it is a much, much different story. So those are just Again, some of the numbers. And at the end of the day, as we know, most people rely on their own doctors, no matter what is said here in Washington. But policy, of course, can impact those decisions. So with RFK Jr. front and center today and that loud debate throughout, that's where we begin tonight here on the Hill. Dr. Michael Burgess joins us in a moment. He's the former head of the GOP Doctors Caucus, and a name that is being floated right now as a possibility to run the CDC. We'll get to the doctor in a moment, but first to Congressman Ami Bera, a doctor in his own right as well, who is also a medical director for care management at 7 different hospitals. Congressman, doctor, thanks for being back with us tonight here on the Hill. We normally talk politics with you, but I guess we get to do the other thing that that you know a thing or two about. So I laid some of it out there, right? Not all of it, some of it. But when you look at it, what's RFK Jr. gotten right? What's he gotten wrong? Tell me what you think he's gotten right.
So it's good to see you, Blake, and it's also good to see my former colleague and friend, Dr. Burgess. So if RFK Jr. continues to focus on obesity in America, I think he's going to find broad bipartisan public support here. That is a real issue. That leads to diabetes, hypertension. We do have a dysfunctional healthcare delivery system, costs way too much for folks. Too many folks are excluded. Yeah, we would be willing to work with them on that as well. How do you make it more equitable for Americans? I think those are places where we could actually work together. Now, focusing on vaccines are pretty much completed science. Measles vaccines save hundreds of lives. These are very safe and effective vaccines that we've been using for years. We could talk about the COVID vaccine, who should get it, who shouldn't get it. That's a reasonable and a healthy discussion and dialogue. Doing away and creating the skepticism in pediatric vaccines is something that I think goes too far.
Okay. There was a back and forth today with RFK Jr. about the changes he's made over at the CDC. Let me play that. I'll get your reaction.
We are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at the CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
You take any objection to what he said there?
Yeah, we're not the sickest country in the world. We still have a reasonable life expectancy. But for a country of our wealth, we should be living longer. We should be living healthier. We should understand why we've gotten more obese over the last 3-4 decades. Those are all reasonable questions. What's happened? Has our food changed? Have additives done something different? So again, those are places we could work together.
Okay.
I would just not question the efficacy of vaccines that we've used for a long time that have been pretty safe. I'm separating out the COVID vaccines. I do think the mRNA technology should be Trump's crowning achievement. The president should take credit for it, right? I mean, that was a lot faster than most of us in the healthcare profession expected, saved hundreds of thousands, millions of lives around the world. That, if he wants a Nobel Peace Prize, I think I ought to go out and say, hey, we did this, I did this. Great, let's keep doing it.
You think Trump should get the Nobel Prize for that? Dr. Bill Cassidy, Dr. Cassidy, a senator today, suggested that.
Well, I don't know that he should get the Nobel Prize for it, but if he's looking for his crowning achievement, getting a vaccine in 9 months that saved so many lives, he ought to lean into this. And I think he ought to call RFK Jr. into his office and say, hey, buddy, back off. These are safe and effective vaccines. Look at the data. And, I think that's where we should go.
I appreciate the time. I want to get to the other side of the aisle. Congressman Ami Bera, a doctor as well by trade, with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you again soon. Other side now, former congressman from Texas, Dr. Michael Burgess, was a longtime member of the GOP Doctors Caucus. Sir, it is nice to have you with us tonight. I'll start with you with the same question I asked your old colleague. What do you think he's gotten right? What do you think he's gotten wrong, RFK?
Well, two things can be true at the same time. I think he's correct in his criticism of the CDC, but then I would also point out that the CDC director that he just fired was picked by President Trump, confirmed by the Senate. And, this was a big deal to me because this was the first CDC director that we've had who underwent Senate confirmation. And the reason Senate confirmation was required was because of work that we did in our Committee on Energy and Commerce in reauthorizing the Pandemic All Hazard Preparedness Act prior to the COVID outbreak. Now, I certainly would underscore all the criticisms Secretary Kennedy had on the CDC, but since January, when Dr. Menards was the acting and then the confirmed director of the CDC, that's kind of different. She wasn't there when those dreadful decisions were made about the testing early on in the first year of the pandemic, and then all of the dreadful decisions that they made sequentially during the 4 years of the Biden administration.
You know, the job is now kind of open. There's a temporary director in there, and your name has been floated as a possibility. Have you spoken to the White House, sir, about it? Do you want the job?
No. Look, I would do anything to help the president and to help the secretary be successful. The CDC is important to me. My entire congressional career was centered around oversight of the CDC and the FDA and HHS in general. But at the same time, no, I have not had any communication. And I don't know that right now the job looks fraught with a certain amount of peril, doesn't it?
Okay. It just might. I don't know if you want to step into that arena, but we saw some of the sounds today and some of the sights. Dr. Burgess, thank you for being with us. I wish we had more time. Just some breaking news in from the White House here. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We are now learning. How about this? The president floated this last week. He is now changing the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. White House officials confirming that he will sign an executive order making that change tomorrow. Of course, there's not necessarily the question, but the belief that it would need to take an act of Congress to do that. Republicans, by and large, have gone forward with whatever the president wants with his agenda. So would he need help up on the Hill with that? We'll see. Either way, NewsNation learning that the president intends to go forward with that decision. Wow. All right. Still to come tonight here on the Hill. Who's ready for some football? The NFL season kicks off tonight, don't you know? I'm going to explain to you how a little-known federal agency, you've probably never heard of it, but it exists. It is now changing the face of betting on not only sports, but also politics. This big announcement that came in just before the NFL season, plus this.
The robots are here. Our future is no longer science fiction.
And, of course, the First Lady, Melania Trump, telling tech leaders today the robots are here. What she's talking about when we come back. I thank you for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Berman. I'll see you on the other side of the break. 4 minutes away, Scott Tranter with me. Look now. Welcome back. Philadelphia. There we go. It's, 6:20 there tonight. And if you're like many Americans, the wait is over. The NFL season kicks off tonight in Philly. The defending Super Bowl champs, the Eagles, facing off against the Dallas Cowboys. And if you were planning to put down maybe a few bucks on the game, or just about really anything else you can imagine at this point in time, it is now a whole lot easier. The little talked about Commodity Futures Trading Commission. That's the CFTC. It's an agency here in Washington. Maybe you've never heard of it. They had a big announcement this week, essentially giving Polymarket the green light to operate right here in the United States. That is the world's biggest prediction market. It joins its competitor, Kalshi, prediction market operating in the U.S., where people can place bets on all sorts of things. Sports, politics, crypto, the weather, you name it. It's probably there. For example, how about this? Who will win the Virginia governor's race? Bettors throwing their money right now. You can see they say no contest. They're throwing their money behind the Democratic candidate, Abigail Spanberger, giving her a 95% chance of winning. The governor there, Glenn Youngkin, the incumbent Republican, was asked about this morning.
I don't know about these prediction tools.
It's only $20,000.
But by the way, if the prediction tool had existed when I was running, I was down all summer in 2021, and I was inaugurated governor on January 15th, 2022. And so races are won down the stretch here. Winsome is coming up strong on the outside.
Polymarket has a new investor as well, by the way, Donald Trump Jr., now jumping on board. Earlier this year, Kalshi as well announced him as an advisor. The guy who knows all about these prediction market things, as the governor said there, he's the man behind the numbers, Scott Tranter, data science director at DDHQ. Hello.
Hey, I should point out.
Yep.
the market he's talking about, it got his race right before it was called on election night.
Really?
So he's right what he's saying, but at the end of the night, it was ahead.
So here's what I want people to understand. You know this, I know this. The floodgates just opened wide up on this. The government basically just blessed over the last 2 months here these prediction markets.
Yeah. And look, this is quite simply, you can put your money where your mouth is when you have an opinion, right? So if you think someone's going to win or something's going to happen, you can put your money where your mouth is. Why this is interesting for politics in this race is, look, 4738.
Yeah, so that's the DDHQ. So that's what, like 9 points or whatever, but a 95%. But the money is saying it's done.
Yeah, and look, that's an 8%, about an 8 or 9% margin. 90, 95, that's a little higher than I would put it, but I would put it right about 90% chance. And look, these markets are basically verbalizing odds of something happening. And so and it's live and it's real time and it's people putting their money down, not just their opinion on the sidewalk.
This was huge in the 2024 election in the lead up, but this has probably been the most famous case since, which is Zoran Mamdani. What are we looking at here? I guess this goes back to after the primary. Even though the polls show, he's up and up comfortably, the money says basically 8 and 10 shot that he's winning. Yeah, the money says he's got 8 and 10, and it's been steady. And I think, look, if some of these mumblings happen about what's going on with Mayor Adams and Cuomo, these markets are going to react to that news, and they're going to be able to reprice it or re-give an opinion on what's going on. I think that's the power of these markets. They're real-time feedback on processing some of these news events. 59 million already bet on that race on Polymarket, another 21 on Kalshi. Here's another example. Presidential winner in 2028. We are so far away, Trainer, from 2028, and yet there's like $17 million on these two prediction markets that have already been bet, and we haven't even gotten started. Not even close to it. And I bet, look, if we show this graphic 3 years from now, which I know we will, it's going to be hundreds of millions. Maybe tens of billions of dollars. Tens of billions. People are putting their money where their mouth is. This is a good expression of where the race is now. And it doesn't matter because we're 3 years away, but this is a good expression of, hey, J.D. Vance, kind of ahead a little bit. Not for sure, 30% for sure, but it lines up with some of the news events. So just to launch off on that, the government basically greenlit these prediction markets, and you're telling me when we get to 2028, the presidential race, you're talking about billions upon billions bet on politics. Not talking about the NFL, politics. Politics. I think the low case is low billions. The high case is tens of billions of dollars. And not just on who's president, who's going to win a congressional district, who's going to be the next mayor, what the total vote is, all these different things. Right. All right. Last one. They're telling me to run, but last one real quick. Because after all, it is the start of the National Football League. That's where the money is. Who you got, Trainer? Look, on this one, I got to go with the Buffalo Bills, mostly because they're on HBO right now, so I'm following them along. But this is going to move, too. Yeah, this will move, too. Only 4 teams where on Polymarket right now where the odds are 10% are higher. Scott Trainer, man behind the numbers, data science director, DDHQ. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. All right, still much more ahead tonight here on the Hill. The Windy City. Is it getting ready for the National Guard?
We believe that they are going to be fully assembled by tomorrow and then can begin operations after that.
The governor there of Illinois on alert as President Trump potentially expands his crime crackdown. But is it legal? Who's now taking the commander-in-chief to court? And look who's not coming to dinner tonight. There is a big meeting at the White House. The who's who and who won't be there is part of the story when the Hill returns. Just about 6:30 here in Washington. Welcome back to the Hill. Tonight, President Trump's clash with local cities could be getting more intense as he considers sending troops to combat what he views as out-of-control crime. Here in D.C., in the nation's capital, the Attorney General is taking Trump to court now over the deployment of the National Guard, calling it, in his words, a, quote, military occupation. Now, across the coast in Los Angeles, a judge ruling against the president's National Guard deployment back in June. Governor Gavin Newsom even calling the cost to taxpayers waste, fraud, and abuse, as he puts it. In Chicago, ICE is looking to ramp up operations as early as this weekend. And the governor there, J.B. Pritzker, a Democrat, saying today that he believes National Guard troops will follow his belief. And if they do, he says his state will sue immediately. And just up the road from here, nearby in Baltimore, it appears to be another candidate for a National Guard deployment.
Baltimore is a hellhole right now. I have an obligation to protect this country, and that includes Baltimore. I saw where Governor Moore was asking me to take a walk down the street of Baltimore. Well, Baltimore is a very unsafe place.
The Maryland governor, Wes Moore, responded by saying that the National Guard should stay away, but that he welcomes help from law enforcement, saying, quote, if you want to have a serious conversation about things that the federal government could provide that could be helpful, it could be FBI and ATF support. Those, he says, are always useful. Joining me now, he is the Democratic congressman from the state of Maryland, Glenn Ivey, back with us once again here on the Hill. All right, Congressman, always nice to see you. You know this, but for our audience here on NewsNation, or those listening to us on Sirius XM, your district, probably, I don't know, like a 20-minute drive or so from Baltimore. You live in the state. You've been there often. What does Wes Moore need to do?
Well, I mean, I think really the point that he made is the right one. I mean, if you're the president and you really want to help bring down crime in inner cities, whether it's Baltimore, Chicago, or Memphis or St. Louis, bringing in the troops doesn't really help to address that certainly not over the long term, because they're not prepared to do law enforcement work. They're not trained to do it. They're not trained with chain of custody. They're not trained with Mirandizing suspects. They're not trained with the force continuum, and they don't have the tools to do it anyway. And by that, I mean they don't have pepper spray or tasers. They only have M4s, which can kill somebody at 500 yards. So,
you say over the long term, and I hear you there, but the crime stats here in D.C., at least over the short term, show that this is working. Violent crime down 14%, property crime down 13%, firearm recoveries up 15%. So how do you square that?
Well, a couple things. One is the long term is what matters. I mean, if you want to spend $1 million a day to try and reduce crime for a couple of weeks, that's great. But if it goes right back to where it was, what have you really accomplished? What would make more sense is to spend that $1 million a day, or it would actually be less, to add police officers and bring them in and put them on the streets, and then you can have a longer term impact. Washington, D.C., I was a prosecutor there starting in 1990. Average 450 to 500 homicides per year. We're at a fraction of that now, and it's long-term impact, long-term changes, enforcement, and working in conjunction with intervention and prevention programs. If you do all of that stuff, you can keep pushing crime down like it was going down in D.C., Baltimore, and Chicago. But if you do the stunt like this for 30 days, it really isn't going to make a difference.
I often mention your Princeton undergrad, Harvard Law. You know a thing or two about the law. The Attorney General here filed a lawsuit today. Do you think he has a case? I mean, there is federal control of Washington, D.C., so does he even have a case here?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to test it. And the other thing that'll be interesting is to see whether congressional House and Senate Republicans move forward with some kind of legislation to try and give the president
Interesting to test it. I didn't hear you say, yes, he has a case.
He has a case, but
okay, all right.
But everything these days is going up to the Supreme Court, and frankly, they're trying to do as much as they can not to have a major confrontation with the president. If you look across the country, though, at the district court judges level, he's losing about 80% of those at the front end. That's why he's taking so many things up on appeal to the Supreme Court.
Glenn Ivey, appreciate the perspective. Always enjoy the time. Glenn Ivey, Democrat from Maryland, with us tonight here on the Hill. Talk to you again soon, sir.
My pleasure.
Yep, right here in our nation's capital. National Guard troops had their orders extended through November to ensure that they receive their full benefits. It also comes as D.C. is now, as I just mentioned, suing over the deployment in the first place. The Attorney General saying, quote, we're doing it to block the, in his words, unlawful deployment of National Guard troops to D.C. Armed soldiers should not be policing American citizens on American soil. With me now, Congressman Ryan Zinke, a Republican from Montana, back with us here on the Hill. Hello, sir.
Great to be with you.
Nice to have you in. How long do you want the troops here in Washington?
Until they're effective. And Glenn's point was that short term. Well, does anyone not think that D.C. was safe? I mean, you look at the crime in D.C. We had members of Congress getting carjacked, assaulted. Mm-hmm. You had staffers being killed and murdered within a stroke of the Capitol. So it is working. Crime is down, as you pointed out, across the board. Crime is down. And what are the federal troops doing? Are they writing tickets? No, what they're doing is they're enforcing and helping the federal law officials. I saw in Anacostia, one of the poor neighborhoods.
Just on the other side of that building.
What were they doing? They were picking up garbage late at night. They're out there online picking up garbage, being present, and that's why it's working. The crime rate is down finally in our capital.
You're a Navy SEAL, member of SEAL Team 6.
Yes.
Do you think these National Guard troops want to be here and be doing this?
National Guard troops sign up for a duty, and they give an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and they are brilliant at what they do. Again, they're not writing tickets. Mm-hmm. They're not performing the duties of law enforcement. They are supporting law enforcement. They're protecting property. They're in the riots in L.A. What did they do? You had protesters throwing bricks, Maltese cocktails, burning vehicles, burning property. Federal government went down to stop it, as they should. We shouldn't have lawless cities. And the fact of the matter is it's working. And look, and it's, long term. Well, how about fund the police? How about support the officers in blue? How about in these big cities, don't defund the police in the beginning? And that's what triggered this whole thing. And I'm glad President Trump says, look, American cities, we have to be safe, and we should be safe.
I mentioned your military service and your military career. NewsNation reporting tonight that the president's going to be signing, on a different topic, an executive order to try to rename the Department of Defense the Department of War.
Going back to the Department of War, right?
It used to be that, and then after the post-World War II era, it moved back, and now the president seems to want to move it in that direction. Is it needed? Should he be doing this?
Well, it doesn't change the mission. It changes the letterhead and
right.
perhaps a narrative. Remember, we have an aircraft carrier.
I guess that gets to the question: does he need to be doing it, or what is the narrative that it changes?
Well, I think he certainly can. I don't think he needs congressional approval to do it.
Okay.
But what I do see is, look, we are in a contentious world right now. We still have Israel, we have Iran, we have Russia, we have Ukraine, we have China, we have Venezuela. We have a marine amphibious unit sitting off the coast of Venezuela, almost going back to Department of War days when gunboat diplomacy with T.R. Roosevelt. So I think it's a narrative. It doesn't change, again, the mission. It's a narrative, Department of War. And I've been to war. War's ugly. It's an ugly name. It's an ugly thing to be in war. A lot of pain and a lot of misery.
Do you think that he surveys the landscape and sees Putin with Xi and Kim Jong-un and things aren't going well with Russia and Ukraine? He thought it would be over with at this point in time. And he sits back and says, maybe we need to change the posture a little bit, or at least project that?
I think that's part of it.
Direct line there, maybe, or not necessarily?
Well, I think in the background, again, the world is unstable. We have villains out there at Putin and North Korea and Iran being probably the top three. There's a projection of power the United States has to have. And when we're serious, you cross the line, especially in South America, North America, our Western Hemisphere. There's a line there that the president will not allow to be crossed. Right. So again, it doesn't change the mission. It changes the letterhead. We'll see where that goes.
Ryan Zinke, Congressman, thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in tonight. All right, other side of the break. How about this? Look at who we saw today. The First Lady talking AI.
The robots are here. Our future is no longer science fiction.
The robots are here. They are indeed. It's true. Robots are here. I guess the question is, what happens next? And speaking of next, later tonight, a big meeting over at the White House, the biggest names in tech, but guess who is not there when the full panel returns?
Bill O'Reilly uncovers the world's most ruthless men, past and present, exposed.
Evil is contagious.
Leland Vittert hosts Bill O'Reilly, Confronting Evil, Wednesday, 10/9 Central, only on NewsNation.
All right, welcome back. The First Lady, Melania Trump, before the cameras today, hosting major tech leaders at the White House for a conversation on artificial intelligence.
Cars now steer themselves through our cities. Robots hold steady hands in the operating room. And drones are redefining the future of war. Every one of these advancements is powered by AI. The robots are here.
The robots are indeed here, I promise you. Notably absent from the afternoon event, though, Elon Musk, who runs one of the biggest AI companies in the world. But that could be an indication that not all is water under the bridge when it comes to that fractured relationship with Musk and Trump. And as the First Lady celebrates AI's potential, others on her family's side of the aisle are expressing grave concern. This today from one of President Trump's biggest supporters, the Missouri Senator Josh Hawley. Listen.
Thus far, the AI revolution is proceeding on transhumanist lines. It is working against the working man, his liberty and his worth. And if that keeps on, AI will work to undermine America.
All right, full panel here with me now. T.W. Riggi, look who's back. T.W.'s here. Former communications aide with the fist bump to Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Aaron McGuire is a Republican strategist with us once again. Lindsey Granger, co-host of Rising on the Hill, and Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States Director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. Hello to you all. Ooh. Nice to have you in. This is like the new cool topic, I guess. And the question is, like, is anyone here going to figure this thing out?
Well, boy, people have to. I mean, in politics, and I think Holly touched on this, right? Right now, left and right is not as important as top and bottom. And people are worried about big tech, big companies, AI taking over jobs. Reuters had a poll last month that 71% of Americans are very concerned about permanent job loss from AI. And I put that in the backdrop of this last month, where we had a bad jobs report in July, another bad jobs number coming out today, 86,000 layoffs, the most since 2020. So people are concerned about permanent job loss. They're worried about trusting these tech companies. They're not trusting the president on the economy. And so I think what's interesting to me about the politics here is the backdrop of being with these wealthy tech leaders who flushed the Trump crypto scheme with billions of dollars.
Well, they're also the ones making all these billions and billions and billions of dollars of investment, CapEx all over the place.
Sure, but does investment come back to workers is the question. I think the Hawley point, and I take Sam Altman as word, that he wants government to come in and actually partner with these companies. This is a serious question of a policy basis. I'm not against AI. I think that AI is important. But to do this in a way that protects workers and livelihoods is a big task that I'm not sure we're up to right now.
If you're against AI, it might come back against... No, I'm sure.
I think part of it was, the part of this event today was to promote AI in education. And to me, at the same time, that's beautiful. I think it terrifies me. Just understanding, thinking about, having a young kid, and then also understanding, like a New York Times article came out yesterday about Elon Musk reprogramming Grok to be more conservative. The New York Times studied their exact responses. One of them, for example, was like, what's the biggest threat to Western civilization? Back a few months ago, Grok said that it was disinformation. Elon Musk wrote back, okay, I'll fix this tomorrow. Tomorrow it said falling birth rates. And so I think, just with that, like, that's actual people and their ideals and their ideologies, and that's not just information. And so AI is aggregating a bunch of different information. And so I just want to make sure that we're protecting people as much as we can, knowing that the influences are just private people and billionaires and, not always having the same interest as neutrality.
Here's what stood out to me. It was nothing that was said today. It was Sam Altman at the end of last year, Deal Book Conference. He was talking about super intelligence. And will the governments come together to deal with it? Watch.
We are going to have some faith in our governments. There are going to have to be some policy issues around that. There is going to have to be global coordination to a degree that I assume will rise to the occasion.
The government's going to rise to the occasion all over the world. And I'm watching that and I'm like, what planet is he living on?
it's always the hopes and dreams of those in big tech that the government will step in and do their work for them. They don't want to put guardrails or parameters on themselves. You've seen this repeatedly with Facebook and with Twitter. We've been having this argument about when will government step in on social media companies to help rein that in, and now on AI to rein that in. My biggest concern for AI is truly with children. And I think that's the point the First Lady was making today. We have heard reports of kids killing themselves because of AI not giving them the tools they need to get the help they need. There is serious concerns about that unfettered access to information in a way that has no constraints, especially on a youth coming out of the COVID pandemic who don't have interpersonal skills in a way a lot of other kids do. That really concerns me. That should be likely the first place that government starts in this.
Totally agree with you. Bringing this out a little further, we aren't the only players in the AI space. China and other adversaries are working closely on this. And I think Donald Trump was smart to take a page out of William McKinley's book during the Industrial Revolution. McKinley focused on building infrastructure here and opening the doorways for private industry to open up pathways to build infrastructure. And second, put tariffs on other competing nations who might steal stuff from us. But it's a lot bigger now. We are actually more hands-on now with these executives than we ever were at the turn of the century in the Industrial Revolution. We're getting tariffs to bring this technology here, so we have the best minds and the best technology right here at home, so we can push this forward.
Around the table real quick, Musk not at the White House today. He's back when? Give me a month.
We are so thirsty for drama.
Watch the somebody turn pretty. When is he back there?
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah.
No, because there's always
he's the leading entrepreneur, one of the greatest minds of.
It doesn't matter if he's
lifetime.
back at the White House or not. Those conversations don't necessarily need to be in person. I'm sure there's plenty behind the scenes we don't know.
You know what's greater than Elon Musk's mind? Trump's ego. He's not going to be back.
No time soon is my prediction.
No time soon. News that just came in, and again, just around the table, the president going to be signing an executive order to rename the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Good idea. Does this matter? Not on
we had
the right tone.
We had a Department of War in a very different scope for 150 years in our nation's history. It accurately describes the scope of challenges. The Department of Defense came out in the post-war period when we were changing our posture, expanding the role of the Defense Department. I think it's a clear-eyed view of the challenges we face, yes.
I think that it's a good thing. It's a secondary name. It's not a full rename of the Department of Defense. It's allowing them to use it. He can be called the Secretary of the Department of War. Right. I think this is something that's going to make to build into their warfighter ethos that you are hearing continuously out of this Department of Defense.
I think with the argument that America First and MAGA base keeps pushing forward to have the name the Department of War when most MAGA base doesn't want to get involved in any foreign conflicts seems very confusing to me.
It is confusing since that's what we ran in his first term as someone who would end wars. And I think Congressman Zinke is right. It's an ugly term. It's not something we want to be in. But I think of it as another one of the kind of Trump facades. It's not about the mission or making us more capable in any way. It's about a splashy thing he can talk about, this branding.
All right. Arguments for both sides of the table. Good to have you back, TW.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Rejuvenated.
I say that genuinely. Thanks all. Appreciate it. All right, still to come here on the Hill. Speaking of war, a very much different kind of war, the meme war between President Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom. What is going on there? And $1.7 billion, all the reasons. Are you going to grab a ticket? Why Uncle Sam is watching when the Hill returns. 3 minutes away, and coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, Elizabeth will closely be watching the White House. President Trump hosts those top tech CEOs, all the biggest names in AI. If the president speaks, you'll watch him live with Elizabeth right here on NewsNation. That's 7 o'clock Eastern. All right, if you're just getting home tonight, trying to catch up on today's top stories, here is what's trending right now on thehill.com. First story right now, the HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. testifying before the Senate amid turmoil over CDC leadership changes. This went exactly as you thought it might have gone earlier today. Back and forth, lots of conversations about vaccines. The president held a phone call today with Vladimir Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, and on it, with other Western European leaders, the president urged them to stop buying Russian oil. and pressure China amid Ukraine war. And then, as our Amy Parnes reports, how about this? The meme war escalates. Newsom and Trump. Those just some of the stories that are trending right now on thehill.com. To find those and more, all you have to do is download the app right there on your screen. Scan the QR code if you'd like, or just head on over to thehill.com. All right, time for my take now. Someone or some people are about to get rich, really rich at some point. No one winning the massive Powerball jackpot last night. Now the figure stands at some $1.7 billion and probably is going to climb from there, maybe even beyond $2 billion by the time of Saturday night's drawing. That's normally how it goes. It goes up as it gets closer. Now there's a real chance it becomes the largest lotto drawing ever. Now whoever wins won't receive all that, of course, especially if they take the lump sum, and then you'll become, of course, one of Uncle Sam's new best friends. You'd also be approaching rare territory. As the Wall Street Journal noted this week, there are 1,135 billionaires in this country. But consider this for a moment. For all that money that is up for grabs, it's still just a fraction of the big number in this town, which is $37 trillion. That's the exploding national debt. For some context here, you'd have to win this Powerball about 18,500 times to reach that number. So, good luck while picking your lucky numbers and on Saturday night, possibly crossing your fingers. And if you happen to be the big winner, hopefully you spend a bit more wisely and budget a bit better than the folks have done in that building right there behind me. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on The Hill.